You're seriously keeping all this junk, Dad? I could sell half of it and still make more than you ever saved. That was my daughter's voice. Lila, 37, sharp as a blade when she wanted to be. I stood in the hallway, just outside the living room door of my old house here in Columbus, Ohio. My name's Robert Mason. I'm 72, and until that moment, I thought I'd raised a good person. Her laughter mixed with another voice, her friend, a younger woman with the kind of casual cruelty people don't even notice in themselves. He's got antiques, right? Those go for thousands online. You could flip this stuff easy. Lila's reply came with a smirk I could hear. Please, half of it's garbage. There's even this ugly wooden box Mom kept, probably empty. I'll toss it first. I didn't move. My hands shook slightly, not from anger, but from the cold realization that the warmth in her tone had been gone for years, and I hadn't noticed. For a few seconds, I just listened. Every word felt like a nail into something fragile inside me. She said, "Once he's in the retirement home, I'll get this place appraised. It's not like he needs it anymore." That sentence landed harder than I expected. Not because of the home, I'd thought about moving into one myself eventually, but because she said it like I was already gone. I stepped back before the floorboard creaked. My breathing was shallow. It felt like eavesdropping on my own funeral. When I finally turned toward my room, my eyes passed over the photos on the wall. Lila's high school graduation, her wedding day, her son's first Christmas. Every frame had been hung by my wife, Anne, years ago. She had believed in preserving memories. Now I could hear my daughter in the next room, her voice fading into laughter again. "We'll start this weekend. He won't even know." I went into my study and closed the door quietly. The air smelled faintly of cedar and old paper, the scent of years I couldn't get back. On the corner shelf sat that same wooden box, plain, square, the size of a loaf of bread. Anne used to keep it close, said it was for when the world forgets what matters. I'd never opened it. I always thought it held letters or small mementos. Now, staring at it under the dim lamp, I wondered if that box was the only thing left in this house that still had any meaning. I reached out, touched the lid, then pulled my hand back. I wasn't ready. Maybe I was afraid of what it might hold, or of what it wouldn't. Outside, the laughter had stopped. Doors opened and closed. The sound of her heels faded down the hallway. I sat there for a long time, listening to the clock tick, each second a quiet reminder that love, once taken for granted, doesn't shout when it dies. It whispers. The house felt smaller that night. The silence heavier. I woke early the next morning, sunlight crawling across the floorboards, like it was searching for something that used to live here. The house felt hollow. Rooms that once hummed with laughter now echoed with absence. I made coffee the way I always had, strong and black. The mug was chipped, a gift from Anne the year Lila was born. On the side it read, "Best Dad in the World." The words had faded, but I traced them with my thumb anyway. I tried not to think about what I'd heard last night, but the sound of my daughter's laughter kept replaying in my head, sharp, careless, almost proud. When Anne was alive, she used to call this place our museum of small miracles. Every object had a story. The porcelain lamp on the table came from our first trip to Boston, when we were still too poor to afford a hotel. We stayed in a friend's basement and bought the lamp at a yard sale because Anne said it looked like hope trying to shine through dust. The clock on the mantel was the first thing I ever repaired for her. It hadn't worked in decades, but she refused to throw it away. Everything deserves another chance, she'd say. And the wooden box, always on the top shelf, tucked beneath a stack of old letters. She'd keep it close during storms, like it comforted her somehow. When I asked about it once, she smiled and said, "You'll understand someday, Rob." I never pressed. Now, I sat surrounded by what my daughter called junk. My eyes wandered from the old armchair to the framed photographs, to the patch of sunlight touching Anne's favorite curtains. Each thing carried a heartbeat, a whisper, a reason. I remembered the day we brought baby Lila home from the hospital. Anne had placed her tiny hand against my chest and said, "Promise me you'll always protect her, even from herself if you have to." That promise lived in me like bone. I sighed and looked toward the living room. A half-empty box of bubble wrap sat on the floor. Lila must have left it last night after her talk about selling things. The thought twisted in my chest. I picked up one of Anne's teacups and held it close. A thin crack ran along the rim, but I could still smell her lavender tea. "If you were here, Annie," I whispered, "you'd know what to say." The clock ticked on, steady as breath. Then my eyes returned to the shelf, the wooden box sitting quiet and patient. It almost looked like it was waiting for me. I thought about what Lila said, that she'd toss it first. The idea made my stomach turn. I reached for it this time, my hand steady. The lid creaked open just an inch, enough for me to see folded paper inside, yellowed at the edges. I closed it again, too afraid to disturb the past before I understood it. I decided I'd look inside tonight, when the house was quiet again. Maybe then I'd find whatever Anne had meant for me to find. For now, I just sat back and let the morning light wash over the room. The dust sparkled like memory. Lila showed up 2 days later, unannounced, wearing that perfume that filled the house long before she spoke. I was sitting in the den, reading the newspaper, when I heard the door open and the sound of footsteps that didn't belong to her alone. "Dad?" she called out. Her tone was sugar-coated, the kind she used when she wanted something. "In here," I said, folding the paper and setting it aside. She walked in with a bright smile, followed by a man in a gray blazer carrying a clipboard. He looked around the room with quick, calculating eyes. "This is Mr. Grady," she said. "He's an appraiser, just here to check some of the furniture. No big deal." I blinked. "Appraiser?" She laughed lightly. "Relax, Dad. You've got too much stuff sitting around. We might as well see what's worth keeping." I stared at her. "You might as well ask what part of my life you can sell first." She sighed, impatient. "Come on, don't be dramatic. You never even use half of this." Mr. Grady gave me a polite nod. "Won't take long, sir." I didn't stop him. I just watched as he moved from shelf to shelf, scribbling notes, tapping wood, opening drawers. Every sound felt invasive, like someone breathing on an open wound. He pointed at Anne's lamp. "This one's nice, maybe $80, $90 tops." Lila's face lit up. "See? Not bad." He moved to the clock. "Vintage, but not working, maybe 30. When he picked up the wooden box, my chest tightened. He turned it in his hands, tapping the lid. "Worthless, handmade, no value." Lila laughed. "I told you. Mom loved that ugly thing, probably empty." She set it down carelessly, the sound of it hitting the table echoing louder than it should have. I said nothing. The room felt heavier with every word they spoke. Mr. Grady finished his notes and smiled faintly. "Well, ma'am, if you're looking to sell, I can connect you with a buyer." "I'll think about it," Lila said, already half distracted by her phone. Thanks. He left through the front door, and the moment it shut, I stood up slowly. You brought a stranger into your mother's house without asking me. She shrugged. It's my house too, Dad. You're just holding on to the past. Those memories are the past, I said quietly. And they're all I have left. Her expression hardened. You don't get to guilt me for wanting a better life. I can't live in this museum forever. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The sunlight through the window fell across her face, and for just an instant, I saw the little girl who used to climb into my lap after nightmares. Then she turned away, and that image vanished. She grabbed her purse and said, I'll be back this weekend. We'll start sorting things then. I nodded once. All right, Lila. After she left, the air didn't move for a long time. I walked over to the table, picked up the wooden box, and held it close. It felt heavier now. Maybe it always had been, and I just never noticed. Silence filled the house again. But this time it wasn't peace. It was something closer to mourning. The next morning, I woke to a silence so thick it almost had weight. The house felt stripped bare, even though most of the furniture still stood where it always had. It was the kind of quiet that comes after someone has taken something you can't name. I walked slowly through each room. The sunlight fell across patches of dust where ornaments had once sat. Anne's favorite vase was gone. Maybe Lila took it for appraisal. The absence hurt more than I expected. In the kitchen, I brewed coffee and stared out the window. Across the yard, the neighbors' kids were laughing, chasing a ball under the maple tree. Their laughter hit me like an echo of what my life used to sound like. When Anne was alive, mornings started with her humming. She'd open the curtains wide, call it letting the light have its breakfast. Now the curtains hung still, and the light came in like it was asking permission. I sat at the table with my mug and the wooden box beside me. The box had always been part of the room, almost invisible, until now. I ran my fingers along its edges. The grain of the wood was smooth, worn down by Anne's touch. It smelled faintly of cedar and something older, like old books and time. For a while, I just looked at it. The idea of opening it made me uneasy, like crossing into a memory I wasn't sure I deserved. Finally, I lifted the lid. Inside, there was a letter folded neatly and a small envelope tucked beneath it. Both were yellowed, the ink slightly faded. My heart beat slower, heavier as I unfolded the letter. It began in Anne's handwriting, graceful, certain. My dearest Rob, if you're reading this, it means time has done what it always promised to. I can only hope you're sitting in the light when you find this. I kept this box to remind us of what we built, and what she might forget someday. My throat tightened. Inside the envelope is something meant for Lila. Don't give it to her unless your heart tells you it's time. You'll know when. She'll need reminding that love isn't an inheritance, it's a choice. At the bottom, in smaller letters, she had written, "When the house feels empty, remember, some walls still hold us." I set the letter down and leaned back in my chair. My eyes stung, but I didn't wipe them. The air felt different now, heavier but with meaning again. I picked up the small, sealed envelope addressed in Anne's handwriting. For Lila, when she forgets what love costs. I held it for a long moment, wondering what was inside. I didn't open it. Not yet. Outside, the wind stirred the curtains, just enough to move a sliver of sunlight across the table. For the first time in a long while, I whispered into the quiet, "You were right, Annie. She's forgotten." The room held its breath. That night, I couldn't sleep. The letter sat on the kitchen table. right beside the lamp. I kept reading Anne's words over and over, tracing each curve of her handwriting like it might give me courage. Outside, the streetlights hummed faintly. Inside, the house felt like a museum of everything that had gone wrong, quiet, polished, and cold. I unfolded the letter once more, whispering the line that stayed with me. She'll need reminding that love isn't an inheritance. It's a choice. What did Anne mean by that? I picked up the smaller envelope, the one marked for Lila. The paper had yellowed, but it was sealed tight. My fingers brushed the wax imprint, Anne's old habit. She always said sealing a letter made words feel sacred. I hesitated for a long time before opening it. The flap tore softly, a sound too gentle for what it carried. Inside was a short letter, just one page, and another document folded beneath it. The letter began, "Lila, my sweet girl, if you're reading this, it means I'm gone, and you've forgotten what home means. Your father has given his whole life to you, piece by piece. Don't sell what he built before you understand what it's worth. Inside this envelope is proof of everything he never told you, not because he wanted praise, but because love doesn't need to announce itself." My eyes blurred, and I had to pause. One day, you'll need help. You'll think there's no one left. When that moment comes, remember this. Your father prepared more for you than you'll ever realize. What he owns for you. I looked at the second sheet. It was a deed, not to our current home, but to a small property outside Columbus. The one Anne and I had bought decades ago, back when we dreamed of building a lakeside retreat. We never told anyone about it, not even Lila. The property was still under my name, untouched, its value now far more than I'd ever imagined. I leaned back in my chair, my chest tightening. Anne must have planned this. She'd left it hidden, waiting for a time when Lila would need to remember what love looked like in silence. I placed both letters back into the box. For a moment, I let my hand rest there, feeling the grain of the wood, the same surface Anne's hands once smoothed when she was nervous. I whispered, "You still protect her, even from heaven." Then I looked toward the darkened hallway, where Lila's laughter had once echoed. The anger that had burned inside me earlier was gone now. In its place was something quieter, a kind of tired grace. Anne hadn't left revenge behind. She'd left redemption waiting. I decided then. I wouldn't confront Lila with what I knew. Not yet. She needed to face her reflection first. But when the moment came, I'd be ready. The night deepened, the clock ticking softly on the mantel. I closed the box and whispered, "Soon, Annie. I'll know when." The house seemed to breathe with me. Slow, calm, certain. Lila came back on Saturday afternoon, her car tires crunching over the gravel, drive like she owned the place. I watched through the window as she stepped out, sunglasses on, talking on her phone about some amazing deal she was close to landing. She didn't notice me standing by the door when she walked in. "Dad, I told the movers to come by next week," she said, setting her purse on the counter. "We'll start with the furniture in here, okay?" I kept my voice steady. "You move fast." She smiled faintly. "Someone has to. You'd never do it yourself." "I was planning to take my time," I said. "Some things can't be replaced." She sighed, her tone soft but sharp underneath. "Dad, it's just stuff. You can't live buried under old memories forever." Her words lingered in the air like dust that wouldn't settle. I walked to the table and sat down slowly. "There's something I want to give you before you start packing." She raised an eyebrow. "What's this about?" I reached for the wooden box beside me and placed it gently in front of her. Your mother wanted you to have this when the time was right. She looked at it, confused. That thing? Seriously? I almost threw it out. I know, I said quietly. She laughed under her breath, shaking her head. Okay, what's in it? Jewelry? Money? Something better, I said. Her tone changed, skeptical now. You're being dramatic again. Maybe, I said, my eyes steady on hers. Or maybe you just stopped listening too soon. She frowned but opened the box. The sight of the envelope with her name written in Anne's delicate handwriting made her expression flicker. For just a second, I saw something like guilt cross her face. Mom wrote this? She asked, her voice smaller now. She did, I said. She wanted you to read it when you forgot what love costs. Lila looked at me, then back at the letter. She didn't open it. I don't have time for this right now, she muttered, closing the box and pushing it away. You'll make time, I said softly, because someday you'll need to. She grabbed her purse, her movements restless. You know, Dad, you make everything so heavy. You could just enjoy things instead of clinging to guilt. I smiled faintly. I'm not clinging, I'm remembering. That seemed to irritate her more. You're impossible. Maybe, I said, but I'm still your father. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The distance between us felt wider than the room itself. Then she sighed, picked up the box again, and tucked it under her arm. Fine, I'll read it later. Happy now? Not happy, I said, just hopeful. She rolled her eyes and walked toward the door. You really know how to ruin a Saturday, Dad. When the door closed behind her, the silence that followed didn't hurt this time. It just settled. I looked around the house, what was left of it, and thought of Anne's letter, of the way she still found a way to speak through paper and wood. Maybe love was louder after all, just quieter in the beginning. The house felt strangely lighter after Lila left, as if her energy had been holding the air hostage. I sat in the quiet for a long while, listening to the creak of the old floorboards and the hum of the refrigerator. For the first time in years, I didn't feel angry. Just emptied out. The late afternoon light spilled across the living room, catching on the dust motes dancing in the air. I walked through each room, tracing my hand along the walls Anne had painted herself, the ones Lila now wanted to modernize. Every corner had a story she'd forgotten. On the shelf by the window sat a photograph, the three of us years ago, at the lake. Anne's arm around Lila, my hand on Anne's shoulder. Lila was smiling, squinting against the sun, her hair tangled by the wind. That was before ambition started whispering to her that love was something she could outgrow. I picked up the frame and whispered, You did your best, Annie. I hope I did too. Outside, the wind rustled through the trees, brushing against the old swing in the yard. It creaked softly, like it remembered her laughter. When evening came, I made myself tea and sat by the window. The wooden box was gone now, in her hands. I wondered if she'd opened the letter yet, if she'd recognized Anne's handwriting and felt that tremor of memory in her chest. Part of me doubted it. But another part, the part Anne always believed in, hoped that maybe, when the world got quiet enough, Lila would read those words and see us again. The truth was, the property papers didn't matter. The deed, the money, even the hidden gift. None of it could fix the years between us. But maybe it could remind her what love had tried to teach before pride took over. I stood and turned off the lamp. The house looked different in the dark, softer, less empty. Maybe because for the first time, I wasn't holding on to bitterness. As I climbed the stairs to my room, I passed by Anne's old sewing table. On it sat her thimble, still where she left it all those years ago. I touched it lightly. "You always knew she'd lose her way, didn't you?" I whispered. Silence answered, but it felt kind. That night, I dreamed of the lake again. Lila as a child, running through the water, calling out for me to catch her, and Anne beside me, laughing, saying, "Let her run, Rob. She'll come back when she's ready." When I woke, I stayed in bed a while, the memory lingering like a faint warmth. I don't know if she'll ever come back, not really. But I know that when she does, she'll find the truth waiting for her, written in her mother's hand and sealed with love that never asked for anything in return. The morning light touched the curtains again, soft and patient. The house still had a heart. It's been 3 weeks since Lila took that box. She hasn't called, not once. Some nights, I sit by the phone anyway, half expecting it to ring. Old habits die slower than pride. I don't know if she's read her mother's letter. I imagine her at her kitchen table, maybe late at night, pouring a glass of wine and deciding to finally open it. I imagine her eyes catching that first line. "My sweet girl." And for a moment, maybe her voice softens. Maybe she remembers what it used to sound like to love without calculation. Or maybe she threw it away. I'll never know. The days here have grown quieter, but not empty. I've started walking again, just down the block, past the old oak trees Anne loved. There's a peace in routine, in doing the small things no one applauds you for. Sometimes the neighbors wave, and I nod back. They think I'm fine, and in a strange way, maybe I am. You can lose almost everything, and still not lose yourself. At night, I sit in Anne's chair. The house still smells faintly of her lavender soap when the air is warm. I read her letters, the ones I never had the courage to before. She always wrote about patience, about letting time be the teacher no parent can. I think about Lila, about how she once used to crawl into my lap after bad dreams, clutching my shirt until she fell asleep. About how I promised Anne I'd protect her, even from herself. And maybe that's what this is. Keeping that promise. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't take revenge. I simply let her walk away carrying the one thing that could still save her, her mother's truth. Now, every night before I sleep, I ask myself one question. Was that love or cowardice? Maybe that's what I should ask you too. Because I gave my daughter everything. My time, my work, my home, my name. You heard what she said, and you know what I still feel for her. Tell me, what should I do now? Should I let her go and live with the silence? Should I forgive her and call her first? Or should I make her face what she's done and let her learn the hard way? Because no matter what she did, I still love her.